Australian universities are in crisis.
That's why we're on strike today.
Anybody who thinks that we don't have a governance problem with our universities is living under a rock.
As public funding has declined, universities have become increasingly corporatised.
We have all these finance and business experts on university councils now, but our finances seem to be getting worse. How's that?
Big staff layoffs. I try not to check my student debt, but every time I do, I can't help but think how it's being used.
We reveal how much money is going to consulting firms and the influence they now wield in our unis.
That is the standard operating procedure, is infantilise the client, make them think that they can't do things without you, and make sure that you end up with a permanent desk.
Universities have redacted virtually all information.
As courses have been cut and jobs lost, universities stand accused of lacking transparency and accountability.
We have a right to know how much universities are spending on consultants.
Is there any chance we'd get a few words on the way in?
So, I'm on the phone.
While the government continues with a policy, it's slammed in opposition.
It's a stupid policy, it's a policy that's failed and it needs to go.
We investigate the turmoil on Australian university campuses and why there's so much visceral anger about the decisions made by university leaders.
The University of Technology Sydney is one of Australia's top-ranked universities. But over the past year, it's been engulfed in turmoil.
It is outrageous. It is unjustified. This is not how a public institution should be run. Profit, profit, profit! Out, out, out!
My name is Andrew Parfitt and I'm Vice-Chancellor and President of UTS. And I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Last year, the Vice-Chancellor unveiled a plan to slash jobs and courses to save $100 million a year.
So how many job cuts are proposed?
So initially we proposed 400.
400, yep. And so I think the NTU was saying that's about 10% of the staff.
It's, yes, around that.
That's pretty drastic,
It
I
is.
think. It must be a pretty significant sort of crisis to feel like you have to cut 10% of your staff.
Yes.
Blaming debt and diminished funding, Andrew Parfitt's initial plan was to cut 167 courses and over 1,100 subjects to stabilise the university's finances.
Hey guys, have you heard about the cuts happening at UTS?
How are you, Ella?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. What are you up to today?
Good. Well, this is our stall from the Stop the Cuts campaign.
Yep.
Ella Haid is a student union rep. She's studying a diploma in languages, which has been discontinued in the cuts.
We're handing out these flyers to let students know that hundreds of staff are going to be laid off at our university and hundreds of courses are going to be gutted from our subject choices. This is Andrew Parfitt. This is our Vice-Chancellor. He earns $935,000 a year. He's the highest level executive at UTS. It's a lot of uncertainty in our education. A lot of people don't really know whether they're going to be able to finish their degree here.
The university leadership is arguing here it needs to save money to pay the debts. What do you say to them?
I think that students and staff shouldn't have to pay for the financial troubles that our university executives caused for themselves.
Last month, UTS announced its revised plan. $100 million in savings would be trimmed to $85 million. Over 120 academics would lose their jobs. 143 courses would be axed. Sarah Wise teaches public health. 2 degrees in her school have been scrapped.
We are going from 15 staff in the School of Public Health to a discipline of 7, and that is really going to reduce the real critical mass of expertise, teaching and research that's been built over the last 8 to 9 years.
Her team trains future health workers in areas like pandemic preparedness and Indigenous health.
No decisions have been made. We're still not clear on really why. What is the rationale? I think is really, really disappointing. And it's something in the School of Public Health, because we are quite driven by our values, we have felt very deeply.
These flashy buildings are a big part of the story. Before Professor Parfitt's time, UTS launched a $1 billion redevelopment plan. Now he insists the $300 million bond that financed one of these buildings needs to be paid off next year.
It's judgment about risk, it's judgment around what controls that we have, and it's judgment around what is actually going to deliver the long-term sustainability of the university.
One UTS staffer said this rush to pay off the bond was like starving your children to pay off your mortgage earlier. And professors at the UTS Business School say this debt should be refinanced to avoid job losses and course cuts, and to avert reputational damage to what is one of the top 100 universities in the world.
Leading UTS academics have branded this a manufactured financial crisis.
Well, my colleagues and myself, we've looked at the accounting numbers, we've looked at what the university has said, and we don't believe it's a crisis.
Paul Brown is an associate professor at UTS, specialising in accounting, governance and innovation.
One of the reasons that we think it's a contrived crisis is the debt we don't believe needs to be paid off straight away. In fact, our debt now is less than it was 10 years ago, and our income has increased significantly. The expenses that have gone up, which have caused this financial tension, are not necessarily the ones that are being looked at.
Instead of relying on its own experts, UTS turned to external consultants. The firm, KPMG, the cost $7 million.
Those $7 or $8 million that were paid to KPMG to advise on the long-term outlook for the university, that is an extraordinary amount of money.
Brendan Lyon wouldn't let a Big Four consultancy firm anywhere near a university. He's a former KPMG partner and says when he was at the firm, they began to target universities.
When I joined KPMG, that was a real focus. They'd recently recruited a former Vice-Chancellor of an Australian university, and from what I saw within KPMG, it was a real growth area and a real growth target.
KPMG managed to embed itself inside UTS. They set out to identify academics and courses that didn't make money.
They had UTS email addresses. My colleagues have been in meetings where these KPMG staff have been identified either during or after the meeting, and it wasn't disclosed in the beginning.
KPMG's infiltration of UTS was so effective that by May 2025, the firm had 24 staff with UTS email addresses. They included 3 KPMG partners and 2 directors.
So that is the standard operating procedure, is get into a client and look as much like you're part of the client as you can. Infantilise the client, make them think that they can't do things without you, and make sure that you end up with a permanent desk.
Staff freedom of information requests for KPMG's blueprint for the UTS cuts came back heavily redacted. Paul Brown was one of a handful of academics allowed into a room for one day to view the full document under strict supervision.
We've done loads of reports. We know what a report looks like. And so we went in and we kind of saw this document. It's about 200 pages. We started looking through it. It's kind of like a PowerPoint presentation.
Paul Brown was stunned by some of its proposals.
There's a couple of laugh out loud moments. So one of them was where they had a organisational structure of UTS, how it kind of looks at the moment, and they kind of overlaid this triangle that looked like a cookie cutter, and they said, oh, if we chop off the sides, that's going to be a good thing. And we laughed because it was like a Woolworths type organisational structure, not a university with all its complexities and the like.
KPMG has refused to give Four Corners an interview, but they've been asked to give evidence here at the New South Wales State Parliament today at an upper house inquiry into the university sector.
Mr Matthews.
Thank you. So Chris Matthews, National Education Lead for KPMG.
Chris Matthews and his colleague Claire McGuinness gave evidence about the firm's work inside UTS.
One element of our analysis included looking at academic performance, which is a common measure across the sector. As part of looking at academic performance, we looked at research income. Research income is one of the major revenue streams of an institution.
KPMG's evaluation of academics as revenue streams angered many at UTS. KPMG employees were present during a 2-day retreat at Manly Beach when the university's full leadership team first heard about the scale of the cuts.
I've been told by people who were in the room that senior leaders were shocked when the numbers were laid out, and that the second in charge at UTS, the Provost Vicky Chen, expressed frustration at the process.
We've learned that the Provost was not happy with how the data was interpreted in the KPMG report and had serious concerns over the proposed cuts.
On the Monday after the retreat, Vicky Chen was suddenly called into a meeting up there in the Vice-Chancellor's office. The Provost's employment was about to be terminated. Within hours, her email access was cut off. She didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to her work colleagues.
In an email to staff, Andrew Parfitt said, with sadness, he was writing to advise that Vicky Chen has decided to pursue her research career. The truth is, she was forced out by the Vice-Chancellor just months after she received a performance bonus. Vicky Chen would not comment. She'd signed a settlement agreement. For months, Four Corners has been trying to get an interview with Andrew Parfitt. His office has said they could not find a suitable date.
A few words on the way in?
No, I'm on the phone.
Is there any chance we get a few words on the way in?
So, I'm on the phone.
We wanted to ask him about the firing of Vicky Chen, about the use of KPMG consultants and the widespread anger over his cuts and how they've been handled.
And I've got an APTI breakfast. They're very happy.
The man who ignored his own staff's no confidence motion was now ignoring us.
Is there any chance we can grab a few words?
A little bit later.
His office said he would only answer questions in writing. UTS did not answer any of our written questions about Vicky Chen's departure or its leadership retreat. The university said changes underway at UTS have been shaped by and reflect the ideas presented by staff during extensive consultation, and that an independent review of its governance would take place this year. Australian universities are now big business. In the 1980s, the Hawke government reforms increased university places. But public funding didn't keep pace, forcing universities to find that money elsewhere. They looked to international students.
It was an entirely different world in the 1980s. At that point, 80% of university funding came from the Commonwealth. Today, it's 40%, so it's actually halved as a percentage, but the number of students has tripled to 1.6 million.
Changes made in 2020 put even more pressure on universities.
Nearly $1 billion each and every year has been ripped out of universities since the Morrison era. It causes real pressure, and ultimately we're putting more pressure on our staff at universities to deliver more for less.
Somewhere multicultural, where international students are welcome.
As universities pursued other funding streams,
you become more than just you.
They became more corporate.
You become you to the power of us.
Marketing, rankings, and industry partnerships began to dominate.
Well, what drives international student demand is often international rankings. What drives international rankings is research and research outcomes. So it's no surprise you get this, if you like, this circular motion between rankings, research, and international students.
I just think one of the things that's important.
A year-long Senate inquiry heard growing concern about the corporatisation of our universities.
The finances of what's been occurring. We've got a system where we're seeing corporate executives coming in running universities without the experience of running an educational facility. Knowing about the money is important, but knowing about the reasons why you're there is essential.
As global leaders in higher education consulting, we can help you reimagine the future and deliver it.
Central to this shift has been the rise of external consultants.
Today, more than ever, they confront an environment of change and disruption.
Firms advising universities on strategy, restructuring, and cost-cutting.
Shape your future with Deloitte.
Corinne Cortese is a Professor of Accounting at the University of Wollongong. We asked her to examine how much Australian universities are spending on consultants and contractors.
For 2024, there was $1.8 billion spent by the Australian universities.
$1.8 billion seems like a staggering figure.
It does.
Were you shocked by that?
I was. And as I was going through each individual one, I was like, that can't be right.
And so the definition of contractor or consultant is unclear. So it could be some consultancy work or contracting work for IT, but it could also be the big four consultancy companies.
Absolutely. And that's part of the problem. I think there's no clear definition about what a consulting engagement is and how it's to be reported.
Definitely the education minister.
We took Professor Cortese's findings to the Education Minister.
Well, it is shocking, but what is also shocking is that you can't break it down. And we should be able to know. We invest a lot of money in our universities. They do great things. But if you're spending some of that money on consultants, then the Australian people do have a right to know who are the consultants, what's the work they're doing, and what's the justification for it. And so they're the changes that we need to make.
So that's good for transparency reasons, but it's not necessarily going to stop them spending all of that money. Are you concerned about the scale of the money they're spending on consultants?
Well, there's a lot of terrific people in universities who I reckon could do that job for the university. But if universities choose to employ somebody outside of the university to do that work, and sometimes there'll be a good reason for it, governments do that as well, other organisations do it too, they need to be accountable for those decisions.
Brendan Lyon is taking legal action aimed at forcing partners in the big consultancy firms to assume greater liability for the advice they give to clients, including universities.
Australia is the only country on earth that has provided practical legal immunity to the Big Four over everything they do. It means that they have no liability, no accountability. It produces the results that we've seen of terrible damage to universities, terrible damage to corporations and taxpayers. The firms that have this protection that operate as consultants are Deloitte, EY, PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Cortese, BDO. Effectively, the firms that are consultants but continue to masquerade principally as accounting firms, and they've expanded the public interest protections for regulated accountants out to all of their unregulated consulting work. It's a crazy situation. It's one that sets the country up for failure all over. The universities are but the latest victim of this ongoing scam.
Consultants are not just advising universities, they're also embedded in their governing boards, shaping decisions about their future. Of 15 universities we sampled, 13 had serving or former staff from leading consultancies on their governing councils.
I believe that there's an intended infiltration of our governing boards by consultancy firms. It's all the mates looking after each other and seeing these consultancy costs balloon right across the university sector.
You're actually going to have those hard conversations.
Yeah. One of the first recommendations of the Senate inquiry instigated by Tony Sheldon was that universities improve the transparency and accountability of their governing bodies.
Clearly, universities don't have the transparency that big businesses have. We've seen universities self-governing themselves, run by corporates, like a corporate, but without corporate responsibility.
At a time when universities have been cutting jobs, vice-chancellors and their executives have come under fire for bloated salaries.
We have 300 senior executives in Australian universities that get paid more than their state premier. We've got numerous vice-chancellors that are getting paid once, twice, 3 times more than the Prime Minister.
Australian vice-chancellors are among the highest paid in the world. A Four Corners analysis of the latest university annual reports from 2024 found that 20 Australian VCs were paid over $1 million a year. All 20 earned more than the Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge. Are Australian Vice-Chancellors overpaid?
Australian Vice-Chancellors run some of the most complex and large universities in the world.
Are they overpaid?
I think it's really important that there is much more transparency and accountability in the way that those wages are set. I don't set wages for Vice-Chancellors. That's the job of the Chancellors and the governing bodies.
As universities face financial pressure and consultants play a growing role in decision-making, the consequences are being felt on campuses across the country. Orientation Week is underway at the Australian National University. Behind the smiles and welcome speeches, the university has been in disarray. Plans to cut around 650 jobs and save $250 million triggered a backlash across the campus.
Well, ANU's been an absolute circus. And we've seen student dislocation and disengagement. We've seen courses collapsed and closed. We've seen everything you could possibly do wrong happen the wrong way at the university.
In 2023, Chancellor Julie Bishop announced tech executive and academic Genevieve Bell as her new Vice-Chancellor.
And I know there's some of you in the audience going, I don't even know what a Vice-Chancellor is. I wasn't entirely sure what it meant either when I said yes to the job.
She lasted just 20 months in the role. More than 800 staff passed a 95% vote of no confidence in both Bell and Bishop. One of the most contentious things about Professor Bell's appointment had been her remuneration package.
Genevieve Bell, whilst getting paid $1.5 million, was also moonlighting with Intel and getting paid for that. To have this sort of arrangements existing within a university raises some serious questions about governance and accountability.
Under her leadership, ANU had planned to abolish its prestigious 60-year-old School of Music to save money, collapsing it into a new school of creative and cultural practice.
It's been heavy. There were so many changes to our program that have been made on the fly. We have to take courses that we never thought about, ones that don't interest us, ones that we don't necessarily think are actually beneficial to our learning.
The music students fought back, threatening legal action. Under the new interim Vice-Chancellor, the music school has been saved. But for these students, the damage has already been done.
We lost a lot of our best students, our best friends. We lost all of our bass players. I'm a drummer. I can't really play without a bass player.
We're paying around about 40 to 50 grand for the degree. Feels like we're wasting our money on something that they're not providing to us.
The students say there are positive signs the university's new leadership will help restore the School of Music's prestige. There's no doubt that ANU has faced financial stresses in recent years. But serious questions have been raised about the scale of the proposed cuts.
The whole argument behind ANU's cuts has been undermined by an unlikely source, their own annual reports. ANU claim they had a deficit of $142.5 million, but they didn't count key revenue sources. In their annual report, it actually states they had a surplus of $90 million, and that's led to accusations of cooking the books.
So back in 2020...
Richard Dennis discovered the discrepancy. He's an economist and a former ANU academic.
Is the ANU cooking the books?
Yes, ANU are cooking the books. According to their audited accounts, they made a large surplus last year and the year before. They're claiming to be running a deficit, they're claiming to have a financial crisis. The audited accounts show that's not the case.
Why would they do it though? What's in it for them?
Well, with crisis comes opportunity. They are making the case that they have to sack certain staff, they have to change certain courses, they have to. They're saying they've got no choice, they've got no alternative, but they do.
So could they argue that this is not permanent revenue coming in, that they're structurally in deficit?
They could argue anything they want, but they haven't convinced their auditor of their argument.
ANU did not respond to questions about what Richard Dennis asserted. In a statement, it said it was consulting widely with staff, students and other stakeholders about the next university strategy, and that financial stability remains a priority. ANU's leadership is about to come under even more scrutiny. The Australian National Audit Office has been examining ANU finances to see whether the cuts were justified. The ANAO report is yet to be released, but Four Corners has been briefed on its draft findings. It says that while ANU revenue was not keeping up with costs, it faced no immediate financial crisis. And that undermines the whole rationale behind those deep cuts. Four Corners understands the report says the ANU Council approved the proposed cuts without clear evidence that they were needed, urgent, achievable, or likely to have their intended impact. That the Council should have considered alternatives to the plan, and that while the plan delivered some savings, it came with big risks and costs. We also understand the draft report raised serious questions about the university's longer-term financial health. The Minister's office says he has not seen the draft report.
As the Minister for Education, you have unique powers and responsibilities for the ANU. Are you concerned that ANU announced $250 million worth of cuts at a time they had a budget surplus of $90 million?
There's some very serious allegations have been made about what's happening at the ANU, and that's why I referred that to the university regulator, TEXA. That investigation is happening right now.
TEXA, the regulator, has said at the moment they don't have the powers to really push for change when it comes to governance failures with universities. Do you want to legislate in that area?
Yeah, I do. TEXA's basically got a sledgehammer and a feather at the moment and nothing in between. That's why we're going to change the Act. It'll be the first major change to TEXA in 15 years to give them the sort of powers they need to act where universities don't.
The ANU is now facing multiple investigations into its finances, governance and conduct.
ANU leaders behave with impunity.
One inquiry involves Dr Liz Allen, an ANU demographer who alleged under parliamentary privilege that she'd been bullied by Chancellor Julie Bishop while on the University Council.
Since 2024, I've experienced threats, intimidation and bullying because I sought greater probity of council conduct.
one of the reasons you're most upset is because...
Julie Bishop has emphatically denied the allegations.
Well, I absolutely reject each and every allegation that was made against me.
Neither Julie Bishop nor Liz Allen would answer questions about the allegations while they are subject to an inquiry. Julie Bishop declined an interview.
KPMG report.
Liz Allen was prepared to speak about what she considers to have been a manufactured financial crisis at ANU.
ANU was doing well, and then all of a sudden there was this catastrophic financial crisis that was put to council by ANU leaders, by ANU executives, that hit the panic button to extreme.
Liz Allen says she has concerns about the data the university gave to the consultancy firm Nous and how it may have been used to find efficiencies at the university.
The trouble is that that data and the process of the methodology of the creation of that data is an entire black box. That methodology is not transparent, it is not public, so we can't scrutinise the way that the data is transformed.
And I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Now CEO Tim Orton says they've done over $43 million worth of work for Australian universities over the past 5 years, including around $2 million worth for ANU. Nous insists it did not design the plan for the ANU cuts, but says the firm advised on future arrangements of their academic portfolio under the restructuring plan. After giving evidence at the New South Wales Upper House inquiry, Tim Orton spoke to Four Corners.
Some critics say there's a conflict of interest in your business model, that you're providing the analysis through the data, you're diagnosing the problem, then you're offering your services to cure it. Is there a conflict of interest in your business model?
Our Nous Data Insights and Nous Consulting are two separate businesses. Nous Consulting does not have access to Nous Data Insights information, doesn't have access to the uniform data. But of course we're good consultants, and as good consultants, we will approach universities and say, we have an expertise we think would be of benefit to you.
And do you ever...
And they find that to be the case in some cases, and in other cases they don't.
So through Uniforum, you access the university's data. How do you know that data's accurate?
Now again, your premise is wrong. Through Uniforum, Nous Data Insight accesses the data.
Yeah, which is your company, right?
Nous Consulting, which is doing the...
But they're both your companies, right?
They're both my companies. They're both owned by Nous Group International. But I wanted to emphasise to you, because many people misunderstand this, and it's important you do understand it and give me time to answer the question, because you're keen to go. Nous Consulting does not access the Nous Data Insights data unless the university says we want Nous Consulting to have that data.
Okay, but what I'm...
Tim Orton argues the universities get good value for money from Nous.
Over those 5 years that we've earned your $43 million, universities' revenues were $200 billion. Everyone would understand that if you put 43 million versus 200 billion, it's a tiny, tiny amount, but it's incredibly high value. As I said, university leaders are sophisticated professional managers. They make really well-informed decisions about when they want to use consultants, such as Nous Group, and when they don't.
This is what's left when a university is stripped back. Empty offices, lecturers gone. At the University of Wollongong, jobs have been slashed, courses cut. Around 200 staff lost their jobs after a major review of the university conducted by consulting firm Cortese.
We're talking about a university that is central to its community. For those staff and those students to be put through what they have been in the last couple of years is deeply distressing.
Academics, courses and disciplines were judged on how much money they made. Those that didn't measure up were cut. Unlike at UTS or ANU, no one's suggesting that Wollongong faces a fake financial crisis. The university's 2024 annual report shows debts totalling $462 million.
These buildings up here are the main source of the University of Wollongong's financial problems. It's student accommodation, and it's part of a public-private partnership.
When COVID hit, guaranteed residency rates could not be met. The university borrowed heavily to buy out its private partner. In 2024, in a lavish ceremony, the University of Wollongong installed the businessman and banker Michael Still as Chancellor. He presided over a purge of the university's leadership.
First of all, we lose a VC, then we lose 2 deputy vice-chancellors, then an executive dean goes, then a vice president also goes, then a chief operating officer also goes, and he'd only been in the role for 12 months. So we made jokes at the time about installing a revolving door on that building.
Michael Still appointed an interim Vice-Chancellor, John Dewar, who had run La Trobe University for over a decade. He proved a controversial choice because he was a partner at the consultancy firm Cortese.
When John Dewar's appointment was announced, the university community was told that John Dewar was on leave from the consultancy firm Cortese. The conflict of interest then emerges when Cortese is invited, in fact, by Michael Still to put in a tender to manage a whole of enterprise operational review of UOW.
Cortese had been asked to submit that tender just 2 days after the university announced the appointment of John Dewar.
Independence is in our DNA. It shows in every decision that we make.
The firm ended up securing $3.8 million worth of work from the university. At a university town hall meeting, Professor Fiona Probyn-Rapsey
Hi, John.
confronted the new interim VC.
John, you're a partner at a company called Cortese, which is a company that specialises in disaster capitalism, it seems. Cortese has been contracted to do a number of reviews at UOW. So it seems to many of us looking in that constitutes a conflict of interest. Are you a consultant?
I'm not working for Cortese at the moment. I'm working for the University of Wollongong. I've taken unpaid leave from the firm, and my employment contract is with the university as interim Vice-Chancellor. So I'm not employed as a consultant. I'm employed as the Vice-Chancellor.
When Mr. Dewar came along,
Michael Still told the New South Wales Inquiry that Professor Dewar was on unpaid leave from Cortese while employed as interim VC. He had a deal to work a 9-day fortnight.
Which of those is correct?
The Chancellor was questioned about what Professor Dewar did on his day off.
but he had no working relationship with Cortese. That was our insistence.
Michael Still later qualified this comment in a written submission, saying Professor Dewar's contract gave him the flexibility to spend his free time at his own discretion.
Michael Still's response to that inquiry failed to mention exactly what Professor Dewar was doing on that one day off a fortnight. A letter written by Still, obtained through Freedom of Information, shows Still and Dewar had an agreement that the new Vice-Chancellor, as part of his $1 million a year contract, would work at Cortese on one day a fortnight.
You have confirmed that your ongoing role at KM during the term will be unpaid and will comprise 1 day per fortnight, during which time you will provide leadership to a team of consultants in the higher education practice.
Michael Still and John Dewar both declined to be interviewed. The university says Professor Dewar was not involved in any part of the tender process, assessment or appointment decision of Cortese, and that he did not do any paid work for the group while he was acting Vice-Chancellor. What do you say to that?
It sidesteps the whole issue of the fact that as Vice-Chancellor, it's his job as part of the executive management to oversee that operations review and to be responsible for the decision making in relation to that operations review. So it doesn't matter that he wasn't involved in the decision about the tender process. That's a minor part.
And we'll start with you, Mr. Shanks.
The university's former Deputy Chancellor, now Pro-Chancellor, has also been accused of a conflict of interest, this time involving KPMG.
We've set very tight rules to make sure that I'm never involved in any selection decisions or others, or be in a situation where KPMG would be reporting to me.
Warwick Shanks is a partner with KPMG. As Deputy Chancellor, he chaired a financial committee of the university.
I could say honestly, until I was invited to this inquiry, that I have not known how much work or the nature of any work that KPMG does with the university.
In a written response to the inquiry, Warwick Shanks said that KPMG had done around $2.7 million worth of business for the university over the past decade.
After looking at these financial documents, obtained through Freedom of Information, we discovered the figures disclosed to the inquiry were wrong. In fact, KPMG were paid more than double what the university had claimed. The university says that when all of its entities are included, that figure is actually $6.6 million. Warwick Shanks declined an interview. When Four Corners alerted the chair of the inquiry, Sarah Kane, she said it reinforced her concerns about accountability across the sector, and that it was up to the committee to decide whether the parliamentary inquiry had been misled. The university told us there was no intention to understate expenditure. At Wollongong, just like at ANU and UTS, a pattern is emerging of consultants shaping decisions about the future of Australia's universities. In Cortese report that recommended making tens of millions of dollars worth of cuts, they acknowledged the workforce data they used was unreliable.
They had poor quality data when it came to the workforce, when it came to workloads, and when it came to the reliance on casual staff. And they note in their own report that despite cleaning efforts, they still can't really stand by the quality of the data. So, does this prevent Courtamentha from coming up with massive recommendations for job losses across the institution? No.
Academics at UTS say it was a similar story there, with the data provided to KPMG.
We know that that data was fundamentally flawed.
How do you know that?
Because we've seen the report that was used and was never corrected. So the problem with using external consultants is they don't know what questions to ask. They basically take what's given to them and then they use it.
This kind of data is known as garbage in, garbage out. And the garbage out that consultancy groups are using is the garbage that we're presented with to justify our job losses and the restructuring of our universities.
At Parliament House, leaders of Australia's university sector are gathering for an annual dinner. They know the Minister Jason Clare is pushing for change. After commissioning a report into governance, he's vowed to make universities more accountable.
This year, for the first time, the Remuneration Tribunal will get involved in the setting of salaries for Vice-Chancellors. University boards will have to become a lot more open and a lot more accountable.
One of the most controversial policies, the Job Ready Graduate Scheme, remains in place. Brought in by the Morrison government, it ripped close to $1 billion out of universities each year and more than doubled the cost of an arts degree.
It's actually turning students who have the best need for university, for social mobility, away from studying at uni. These are the poorer kids. And it's deeply unfair. The cost of an arts degree, $52,000 versus $14,000 for a maths degree. It's unfair and it's failed, and I see it as the most urgent reform needed in the sector.
Okay, felt like a fireside chat to that.
Given you've been Education Minister for nearly 4 years now, what's stopping you from getting rid of it?
Oh, I've said it's failed. I've also said it's expensive to fix and not easy to fix. I've also said that the Tertiary Education Commission that we're setting up right now, that's in the Parliament right now, will have a role in making sure that we find out the best way to fix this.
So you've said job-ready graduates has failed, but you've failed to get rid of it, haven't you?
It's a bit like eating an elephant. You've got to do it one bite at a time. We're investing about an extra $6.5 billion into the system right now to implement the sort of reforms to help more kids from poor backgrounds get to university in the first place. But the job's not done yet, and this is one of the other things we need to work on.
Hey, have you heard about the staff cuts happening at ETS? We've got a petition about it if you wouldn't mind. It takes...
Students like Ella Haid say they can't wait any longer for the government to act.
Hey, how's it going? My undergrad in history is going to cost at least $50,000 by the time I'm done. I think it's pretty telling from Jason Clare and the Albanese government that they will lambast university executives for not running the universities properly, but at the same time they're not willing to spend the money to increase tertiary funding.
The system for funding universities is broken. It's a system that relies heavily upon universities getting money from other sources. It leads in a big emphasis towards corporatisation. And I actually think the real call is a return to mission. And starting with those students. If we're not giving our students the best education, a great opportunity to job, then we're failing at the most basic point.